Are you having a logging nightmare where all of your logs are on different servers? Well, let me help you out. Here's how you can set up centralized logging with Rsyslog in under 6.5 minutes. So we need 3 things to start. We'll need 2 servers, one server to collect our logs onto, we'll call this one the central server, and then one client server to send our logs from. You could also have multiple of these as well though. We also need Rsyslog installed on all of these servers, but luckily this comes pre-installed with most Linux distros. I'll be using Ubuntu on both of mine. So let's start out on the central server first then. So this is one that we want to receive the logs on. First, we can check Rsyslog is actually installed. To do that, all we need to do is run rsyslog-d-v like this, and you should see some version information. Next, we need to check that it's actually up and running as well though. For this, we can say systemctl and then status rsyslog like so, hit enter, and you should see that it says it's active and running. If it doesn't, don't worry though, you can start this service. All you need to do is say sudo and then systemctl space start and then rsyslog like this, and you should be good to go. Now this is actually a good time to go ahead and get your server's IP if you don't have this already. Since I'll be doing this internally, all I need to do is say hostname-i, and I can go ahead and remember that for later. So now that we know we have Rsyslog installed and up and running, let's go ahead and change its configuration. I'll be using nano as my editor for this. So let's change the main configuration file. For me, that's going to be sudo nano/etc/rsyslog.conf and enter. You should see a file that looks a little bit like this. Now in here, we want to enable Rsyslog to receive incoming logs via TCP. So scroll down to the TCP section that's going to be under this UDP bit here. So it should say provides TCP syslog reception and then uncomment out module and input. And that's going to go ahead and enable that. Now note down that port of 514 there. I'm going to leave it as the default. You could also go ahead and change this here if you wanted to. Now I also want to organize my incoming logs a bit. So at the top of this file, I'm going to go ahead and add in these lines here. What this is doing is it's just creating a nice structure where our files are stored underneath the hostname of the server that sent the logs in, and then also the program that created those logs on that server. The second line here just goes ahead and applies this template to all of the logs that come in. And then the third line tells Rsyslog to stop once it's finished applying this template to our logs so that it doesn't get duplicated anywhere else. With that done, we can go ahead and save this configuration. Now, a check here you might want to do is to make sure that your firewall is actually letting TCP come in on that port that we just saw. So for me, I'm going to do sudo and then ufw allow 514/TCP, and we should be good to go. The final thing we need to do is restart the Rsyslog service. So for that, it will be sudo systemctl and then restart rsyslog.service like so. This should be all we need to set up the central server then. You can actually go ahead and check that it is ready on that TCP port if you want. For that, you can say sudo ss-𝗵𝗵𝗽𝘀, and then what we'll do in here is we'll just grep for Rsyslog so we can see it quickly. And you should see that it says TCP listen, and it says we're listening on port 514, and the user that's listening on that is Rsyslog-D, so we know it's all up and working. So now we need to go ahead and modify our client servers. So I've SSH'd into one of my client servers then, somewhere that I want to send my logs from, and I'm going to quickly run the same check for Rsyslog being installed here. So that was rsyslog-d-v like so, and there we go, we're seeing some version information. Now I'm actually going to trust that this is running too, but you can repeat those same commands we did on the central server if you want to. Now on the client server, we actually change a different configuration file. On here, we're going to be modifying the logging rules, and I'll modify the defaults once again. We're going to be using nano as the editor here as well, and it's just going to be sudo nano and it's /etc/rsyslog.d this time /50-default.conf like so. You should see a file that looks like this. It says default rules for Rsyslog, and there's some various standard log file entries in here as well. We're actually just going to be adding one line into this, which is going to tell it to forward all of our logs to the central server. So underneath these comments here, I'm just going to make some space. We'll do *** space @ then the server IP of where we want to send them to, and then that port number that we configured from earlier, so 514. I'm using centralserver.lan here, as I've actually set up my network to use domains, but this is where you'd paste in that IP for your central server that we got from earlier. That's actually the only thing we need to change about this file, so we can go ahead and save this now. And once we've done that, all we need to do is restart the service. So that's going to be sudo systemctl restart and rsyslog.service. And once we hit enter on that, we've actually set up log forwarding already. It's probably already forwarding some of our system logs. We can actually create a test to see this for ourselves if we want. So what I'll do is I'll say logger, and then we'll do something like hi from client, and we hit enter on that. Next, I'm going to check that this log entry is actually in my system log file. So I'll do sudo and then tail/var/log/syslog. It should show up in there. And there we go. At the bottom, we can see James and hi from client. So let's check this on our central server then. First, I'm going to check if anything is in that var/log file, as it should have created a new folder. So I'll do ls and then /var/log. And there we go. You can see we've got client server here. That means it's created the folder because it's received some logs from my client server. So let's see what's inside of this folder. For this, we'll do sudo and then ls/var/log/client-server here. Hit enter. There you go. You can see we've got some log files coming through. So we've got my user log file, kernel, and various other things. Let's go ahead and check out what's in my user log file though. So we'll do sudo and then tail/var/log/client-server/james.log. Hit enter. There we go. We're seeing my hi from client message that came from my client server all the way over on my central server now. Let's run this test again though. I'm just going to repeat that same command earlier from logger, and then I'll go back to the central server and tail it, and we should see a new line. And there we go. The new line has come through. So logs are now correctly being forwarded from our client server to our central server. Hey, if you want a better place to centralize your logs, check out betterstack.com. It's a radically better observability stack with a ton more features. I'll leave links in the description down below. Subscribe while you're down there. Any questions, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.